G'day guys, I'm here with Michael Roberts, who has just built a 19 metre or 62 foot weapon of a catamaran, and I'm actually inside his saloon right now, and we're just going to have a bit of a chat because this launch video should serve as a major inspiration to anyone that's interested in doing any project, whether it be a boat build, a car project, or anything in general. And I'm just going to let Michael tell us all about it.
Feeling very good.
Why are you feeling good, mate?
I'm feeling good because at last, after years of work and a lot of uncertainty, we've got this boat in the water, and amazingly it floats and it feels so good. And we're sitting in paradise here at Currambene Creek, and the beach is just off to the left. Go for a surf in the morning. My God, all this work and I've been missing out on the sea. I love the sea. I love to sail. I've been building boats since I was on and off since I was about 7. My first boat was a little raft. Sailed across the bay to Manly, couldn't get back. Next boat was VJ. Boat after that was a Harley trailer sailor. And I don't know, in between all that, I did a lot of inventing and selling stuff, selling inventions. I think I became a sort of a professor after that of engineering at Sydney Uni. And then that finished. And I thought, what am I going to do? Why, build a boat.
So what was the catalyst to building this particular boat?
The catalyst is, we're not getting any younger. And what we noticed is, when you sail on a monohull, it's very elegant and all that. But the thing is, they lean over. If you're leaning over for 2 or 3 days and there's lightning crashing around you and a big wind, you don't sleep, you don't eat, and you're lying on the cockpit floor wet, and it ain't that good. So I thought, if we're going to keep on sailing, which I want to do, we've got to have a stable boat. And so I thought it's got to be a catamaran. And then I thought of, about 50 feet or something, maybe 48 feet. I haven't really sailed a catamaran much before. So I began to read, and then a mad mate of mine, he said, if you're going to build a cat, it's got to be a 60-footer. Really? And then a few other things started to fall into place. The proportion of the boat, if you want to, the Pacific is a big place. I want to go into the Pacific. And you've got to be able to go fast. And therefore, you've got to be able to do 10 knots comfortably, something like that. So I began to research that. And to do that, you've got to have a ratio of beam to length of around 13:1. Now, it turns out that a queen-size bed is about 1.5 meters. And so multiply that by 13, and that's how you end up with this length. I think that's about right. Yeah, 13 times 1.5, whatever that is, 20 odd meters. Mm. And then a whole lot of other stuff began to fall into place. I read all the good old books like Skane's Book of Yacht Design and Goujon Brothers.
So Michael, did you actually come up with this design in your head, or did you use some type of a program to formulate the design?
I learned how to draw with Rhino. Without Rhino, this could never have happened. I got to say, if there's one thing you've got to do, if you're going to make something, make anything, learn 3D CAD. It's a miracle. You simply sit in front of the computer, you play it like you learn to play a guitar or a piano, and it becomes second nature, and you draw whatever you're going to draw, and then you hand it over to a cutting service, a CNC cutting service, and it doesn't matter whether it's stainless steel or plywood or anything. These machines, either laser cutters or milling machines, they cut out stuff for nothing, relatively nothing, and it's precise to a fraction of a millimeter. So whatever you do, don't try and do it by hand. It's too labor intensive. Learn Rhino or something similar. I love Rhino. And that's how we built this boat. Everything was CNC cut. And so instead of having a whole lot of people, all I had to do was draw all the shapes I needed, get it cut, and then it clicked together like a child's dinosaur. You know how they have those cut out bits of a dinosaur and they sort of click together like this. Well, anyway, that's what happens. And then, as I designed the hull, I came across some very interesting software from Delft University in Holland. The Dutch really know about boat building. And I'm trying to optimize the shape of the hull to make it go fast. And I came across this technique where I could test the hull against the hull resistance software, which would calculate how much drag, how well it was sliding through the water. And I sort of came up with this sort of Darwinian evolution idea, where I'd make a hull and then I'd start tweaking it a little bit lower in the bum, a little bit up in the bow, a little bit this, a little bit that, narrower and longer. And every time I tweaked the design, I would then run the resistance calculation, and I started off with the resistance curve versus knots going like this, and I pushed it down and down and down. Eventually, we got to such a slippery hull that that was, I think, hull version number 22. And I'm fairly confident this thing's going to go like a rocket. So there's a few things about the hull design that I began to realize, thinking about the boat moving through the water with the pressure on the wind pushing against the mast, pushing the bow down. And I came across this idea, and it's probably proper naval architects. I'm just an engineer. Proper naval architects probably know all this stuff inside out, but I didn't. So what I designed on the front of this boat is a long ramp, 7 meters long, at an angle of about 3 and a bit degrees, so that as the boat really gets going, there's a lot of hydrodynamic pressure, lift from the water up under that ramp, and that causes the boat to sit back on its bum, and the aft end of the boat is like a shovel. It's wider and it sits back on that, and I'm hoping that the combination of lift under the bow and sitting back on that shovel-shaped stern will cause it won't plane, but it'll certainly slide through the water pretty well. Mm. And there are a few other tricky things. You've got to have negative feedback in the pitching effect. The idea is that if something starts to rock and there's energy feeding the system, it'll oscillate. So you mustn't let that happen. So whenever something rocks like that, there's got to be a bit of a brake on it to cause it to go back. So that's to do with this two very important issues, the center of flotation and the center of buoyancy. And you've got to adjust that so that whenever the bow wants to go down, it's got to have negative feedback. So it just wants to go straight back, because pitching is really the thing that stops boats. I know in a monohull, which I've been sailing for 30, 40 years, in a monohull, as you're pitching through chop, it rises up, bang, hits this thing under its belly, stops it, goes again, stops. You don't want pitching. And that leads me to another sort of important point about the bows. There's a new look in Norwegian cruise boats, icebreakers. Rather than trying to fight the sea, you let the sea flow over the bow and then down the side. So in the case of this boat, the bows are just waterproof sections. It doesn't matter if the waves come over. So they're low buoyancy, and I'm hoping that they will just tend to cut through the waves instead of rising up and pitching.
So what method of design and build did you adopt to build this boat? Obviously it's a massive boat, and so much work has gone into it. What were the key elements in your decision on how to build it?
Well, I read all the books like Goujon Brothers and all the others, and they talked about strip planking and vacuum infusion, all that. I don't know. I mean, balsa core, that's ridiculous. I didn't like the idea of balsa at all. And so in the end, I thought, you create a shape by bending plywood over formwork, and then you laminate on top. So I cut out all these ribs using the CNC machine. You've got to use the CNC system. And they're all precise, and they all got notches for the stringers. So the ribs are all stacked up on a strong back. Stringers were fitted, ply bended over that, and then held on with screws. The stringers, by the way, stay, but the temporary formwork underneath goes. And then you laminate over the top of that one or two lateral bands, longitudinal bands with no joints, 18 meters one day, bang, and lots of biax on top, heavy stuff. heavy strands of glass like rope. And but this technique is quick. I was able to build a hull in about 10 weeks. I thought, my God, I'm going to finish this thing in no time. How wrong was I?
Question is, how long have you been building this boat?
Well, the reality is, yeah, you can build a hull in 10 weeks and then you can build another hull. And so I suppose 1 year for a hull, another year for another hull, and then the middle bit was supposed to take a year, but it didn't. And then, of course, there's all the plumbing and the electrics and the internal stuff, and it just goes on and on. Then, of course, you've got to build a mast. My wife and I built a carbon mast. The first thing we had to do was extend the shed, because the shed was only 18 metres long, so we put a sort of a tabernacle on the end. And then, same technique. I designed the mast to be it's a rotating wing section, and I studied a lot of wing sections on the internet. You know, what is it called? NACA, the National Aeronautics something. They publish all these sections, and so it's an amazing time to be making stuff because all these sections were available. Sorry, that was my beer glass. Just I selected a section and then made it so that it was narrow at the top and a bit fat in the middle. And then with one sweep of the rhino mouse, I say, right, section this up, and it goes chick, 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 and makes me 35 ribs for the mast. And they all then were able to be cut out by CNC with their notches and holes for the conduit. They were all able to be cut out on one sheet of plywood. And then it was the same old technique. Mount them all on a strong back, fit the stringers, fold the ply over the top. And then I used a whole lot of carbon, and I bought rolls and rolls of uniaxial carbon and biaxial carbon. And then we made a big vacuum bag. We used builder's plastic. We got a huge roll of builder's plastic, and a whole lot of closed pegs. I've got a 3-phase vacuum pump, which can really suck air out. And so we laminated, wrapped the bag around it very quickly, and we had it all sort of ready. And then pulled the vacuum on it, pulled it in. Of course, that crushes the formwork as well. So I had to just pull it in for a short time till everything's air had gone, and then release the vacuum so that it didn't create dimples. I did get a few. Anyway, that was great because we made a fabulous mast, and you know, the total cost of that 20-metre carbon wing mast was about $5,500. And it's great, doesn't weigh much. Before we put the paint on and the fittings, it was around 256 kilos. It probably weighs 300 kilos now. Maybe that's heavy, I'm not sure. It seems okay. It took a long time to design this mast. The main thing you're fighting is buckling. What happens is if a section is too long, if it's too long, it tends to buckle like this. Now, there's a very nice formula from a Swiss mathematician who used to work for Catherine the Great, and it's called Euler buckling. And what you've got to do is you've got to get the material right, the thickness right, and you feed it in this formula, and it'll tell you how much load you can put on the mast before it will buckle. So with all that in mind, I designed this mast. I then tested the mast by strapping some long bits of steel rod along the side of it, and then I got a hydraulic ram and I cranked it up so much. And it looks like it's going to be okay, because the compression on the mast is quite something. You have to add up the weight of the sails, the tension on every halyard, of course the shrouds, the forestay. You put all this in a spreadsheet, and you add it all up, and lo and behold, before you know where you are, you're up to 15 or even 20 tons in a gust.
Now that you're in the water, and I know you've been in the water for a good couple of months, and in fact, Michael launched just near where the boat was finally built. It was actually built up on a mountainside around about 100 kilometres north of here, and then finished in a yard about 50 metres or 100 metres from where I built mine. And the launch was just a spectacular event for us to watch. But what I want to ask Michael is, what was your driving force when you were building the boat?
That's a bit of a tricky question, Ross. I thought you were going to ask me about inspiring and stuff. The driving force is, I do like making things. I've been designing stuff all my life. I can't help myself really. I just like building stuff. I'm inspired by all sorts of people. There's a fabulous Finnish architect called Alva Aalto, who made lots of amazing furniture out of formed plywood. I'm inspired by Jorn Utzon and the Opera House. He took a huge gamble making that building. I'm inspired by the fact that it's important that we should, not I'm inspired, I want you to be inspired. It's important that we don't lose our skills on how to make stuff. We can't just spend our lives simulating stuff on a computer or working for a bureaucracy. Making stuff is a very fulfilling way to live a life. And I suppose if there's one message I'd like to get across, all these plans I've made, if I can inspire anyone else to embark on a project like this, I really think it's great. I think I'd like to do that. I mean, I've got the boat now. I'm getting on a bit, as you can see. I hope to be able to go and sail to Patagonia or something like that. Meet my friend Jose in Buenos Aires. But also, I would love to be able to inspire someone else to do projects like this. It's not that hard, and it's a hell of a lot better than retiring at the age of 60 and then deciding you're going to play bridge or improve your golf score. This is much more fun. Build a shed, build a boat.
On a day-to-day basis, how did you get up and walk into the shed, and how did you actually come to build the next part of the boat? Because there's so many elements in this boat. It is huge, this boat, and there's so many amazing aspects that I just can't describe without anyone seeing it. And I think it's very important that you understand the mindset of someone like Michael that has built this thing.
What happens is, you start the project, you do have a vision in your mind, and of course you hang on to that. But that can also, the vision can be defeating because you can be easily overwhelmed. So the solution is, Monday morning arrives, go to the shed, and quite often you say to yourself, one says, what do I do next? Because there's so much. And the thing is, it doesn't really matter the sequence. You can't optimize the sequence. You should do this first, and then all that leads to is procrastination. What you do next is you get your tools out, do something, do anything, just get moving. And once you've got some momentum every day, then the day unfolds. And at the end of the day, you've achieved something. And at the end of the week, you've got something to show. And bit by bit, it just keeps adding up. So the trick is just don't be overwhelmed. I think that's the main message. Just do it.
And I know, building a boat, that you never physically complete anything, sometimes for weeks, sometimes months, even years. And a project like this has gone on for a number of years, like mine did. And this boat is 4 times the size of my boat. It's quite an incredible achievement, but basically you never get to the point where you finish anything completely until the day it launches. Or is it complete?
No, it's far from complete. I'm still putting in wiring for the navigation lights, and I've got to put handles on the drawers in the saloon. I've got a lot of job, but I don't mind. We're afloat now. I can have a swim in the morning, and this is paradise here. I mean, it's evening, the sun's going down, it's calm. There are ducks hanging around the back of the boat, pelicans, maybe some dolphins in a minute.